One of the things that we're interested in as psychologists is why do people do what they do? And how do we influence other people to do what they do? In one of the classic experiments, Arthur Ashe put people in groups, showed them uh, a line up like this, and asked, which of these is it most like? Which of these are the same length? And by themselves, they were able to identify the correct match. But in groups, if the group went against them, so did the individual. Think about the classic Milgram study that probably most of you have heard about at one point or another. So in this study, Stanley Milgram had three different people. He had an experimenter, wearing a white lab coat and telling people what to do. He had a learner. So this is a learner who was supposed to be taught a task and was hooked up to a shock machine when he made mistakes. And he had a teacher who was supposed to teach the learner a particular task. Now, the teacher was the only real subject in this experiment. The experimenter and the learner were confederates of for the task. They were actors. The issue here was, what did the teacher do when the learner made a mistake? And most teachers continued and gave intense shocks beyond what, beyond and even into severe, and dangerous shocks. So 65% of subjects gave the most severe shock, even after the learner stopped yelling and screaming. Let me say, the learner was not hurt. It was the learner did not get a shock, and yet the teacher believed that and still gave it. Now, the teacher did not necessarily go, "Oh, cool, let me do that." In fact, some of the teachers were extremely disturbed by this, thinking that they had hurt and maybe even killed someone. Nonetheless, they kept giving shocks. 2/3 of them did. Milgram argued that this was a response of obedience to an authority. So having an authority figure there who told them what to do actually influenced their behavior. So, to our question, how do we influence people? We tend to go along with others. We tend to follow authorities. So we have those two. We tend to be more influenced when the persuasion is based on content and logic, rather than on things like attractiveness, credibility, and emotion. This persuasion, the peripheral route, is relatively temporary and easier to change than the central route. Another influence is the foot in the door technique, where we make a small request first and then a larger one. So, would you like to donate some old clothes for one of our charity programs? And then later, would you donate $50 to our organization? And many more people are willing to donate in this situation if they were asked to make the small or given a small request first. On the other hand, sometimes it's useful to make a large request first. Would you volunteer to run a weekly program for our youth group? And if no, then our small request, would you donate $50 to our organization? Again, many more people are willing to do this, to make the donation under this circumstance than if they, if they are not given that big request. So let's go back. Remember, we had conformity to the group. We had obedience to authority. We had, this sort of consistency. If I did this, then I should do this. Okay. And also, here we're talking about, well, I'm going to be nice. I said no here, but I could do this. Okay. So there are a number of things to think about here. There are source factors, is it credible? Is it likable? There are message factors. What does it appeal to? Fear as opposed to logic? Is it one-sided or a two-sided argument? Repetition? Is it in person, on television, audio tape, internet? And receiver factors, what is it about you that might influence that? And so your chapter describes a number of these issues to greater degree. Your critical thinking model is asking you to think. I think when I first heard about some of these studies, my reaction was, oh my God, what if I were to do some of these things? And knowing about that, knowing that that's a possibility, decreases the probability that it's going to happen. If you insert a pause, so if someone asks you, gives you makes an outrageous request, you can stop and say, whoa, that's a foot in the door technique, and I don't want to do that. Recognizing those things, recognizing what's happening, and considering the other things that might go on, the role of the context here can change your behavior and give you some choice back in terms of how you want to respond. And take care.